What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. With how well the most overrated games of all time, in my opinion, video just did, I thought now might be a good time to do my top 10 favorite video games of all time. So before we get into it, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe, comment down below your favorite video games of all time, and let's get into it. So over my lifetime, I have played a number of Mario games. I'm wearing a Mario shirt right now, and there's been a lot of great innovations, a lot of great leaps from a 2D side-scrolling platformer to more of a 3D a 64-bit layout with Super Mario 64. Galaxy was a revelation, probably my favorite Mario game of all time for many, many years. But then in 2017, a little game called Super Mario Odyssey came out. And this is number 10 for me on my favorite games of all time list. A big reason this game is so fun for me, number one, is on the Switch, so it's really easy to just kind of pick up and go on the go. But also, it's just how with all the moons, you can play really short spurts of game play, or you can really take your time and explore all these different levels and all these different worlds that are so unique from each other. And there's a lot of really fun missions. Obviously, there's the Cappy ability where you can throw the cap on different things and control them. And of course, the one that always sticks out is the T-Rex on that first main level. So this whole game is just a lot of fun. I've played through it a few times, and it's one of those games that if you haven't played it, if you're one of the few who hasn't played it at this point, and you own a Switch, I cannot recommend it enough, and I have it at number 10. At number 9, it's one of the only two games that I don't even have the box for anymore. I haven't played this game in a really long time. And there's a lot of games in this series, and this series is one of my favorite. I think it's the best superhero series of all time. That's the Batman Arkham series. And I remember playing Asylum even before it came out. I worked at a video game cafe, and we had a copy of the game before it released, and I sat down on the clock and I played through the whole game in 2 shifts. At that time, I was like my late teens, early 20s, and so my priorities were disaligned. But I remember having such an experience with that game. But actually, the game after that, Arkham City, was really the game that gave me an even deeper appreciation for what Rocksteady was doing, and also for their ability to be able to take an idea that works so well with Asylum, that was a little bit smaller in scope, and it was really isolated to this island, Arkham Asylum, and then they just blew that up into a full-blown city that was housing all the criminals of Gotham, and how they had their own free reign of this territory, and how you had to operate in this really vast open world of Arkham City. And it felt a little overwhelming at first, but it's so well thought out, so well constructed, so many great villains, and so many great narrative pieces to the overarching plot that to me it still stands out as the best superhero video game of all time. Spider-Man's great, but I really think Spider-Man has built upon the core ideas of Arkham City, but its identity is rooted in what Arkham Asylum and Arkham City really laid as a foundation, and didn't really do anything innovative on top of that. So I really have to give it to Arkham City at my number 9. At number 8, I'm kind of cheating, but it's 2 games in the same series, and there's only 2 games in the series right now. There's another one coming out later this year. I've played every game in this series with my daughter, and so I have the box for the second one, because the first one I got as a digital game, and it was a great experience for me, and that's Little Nightmares 1 and 2. So something you may not know about me is I love horror games. Of all the genres, it's one of my favorite genres to play in. I love being scared. I love horror movies. And Little Nightmares 1 and 2 both definitely have an element of horror to them. And what's great about it is it's still not traumatic or gory to the point that I can play with my daughter, right? So when 2 came out, she was 10 or 11 years old. So we played through that whole game together after having played Little Nightmares 1. They're pretty short experiences. You can get them done in a couple of hours. I really can't say that I prefer one over the other, because one is such a unique experience, and it's also like a social commentary on the world, while also being void of any direct commentary at all, which is interesting because there's no like words or dialogue spoken in these games, but there's definitely societal conflict breakdown throughout the games that you notice by the way that they portray characters, and they animate characters and design characters and design environments, and a power struggle throughout the characters of the game and these monsters and the people ruling the area. So I really feel like these games are very smart and very well constructed, well thought out, well written, without having to like lay it all out in front of you. And they're kind of creepy too at the same time. Some of these monsters and villains in these games will get your blood boiling, will get your heart racing. Like, they'll freak you out a little bit. Nothing as traumatizing as something like Dead Space, which I also love that series. But this game, like, if you want an experience where it's fun and it's kind of humorous in a way, but still scary, and it's a short gaming experience, so you can enjoy it like in one day. Both of them even together, Little Nightmares 1 and 2, and I'm sure for 3 when it comes out, you can't go wrong. And it's available on like everything now, like on Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, I think Xbox, and then Switch, of course. So go check it out, and it's always on sale. Like, you can get it for super cheap. I think recently I saw 1 and 2 for like $15 total. So go check those out if you haven't played them. So this next one at number 7, it is something that has a lot of content over the years from a lot of different iterations of the game. I'm going to be focusing on what's called Season 1 of the game, and that's The Walking Dead, Telltale's Walking Dead. I don't even know, where do you start? Where do you start with this game? Like, especially the first one. When I got, into my 20s, I would say that there were games I enjoyed that had elements of making choices, and by making those choices, it influenced the direction the game was going, right? Based on your choices, a la like BioWare games. This game made me feel something on a level that I probably wasn't ready for at that time, and I've come to really appreciate even more over time. Like, I when the game came out, the first one, I played through the whole first season as each episode dropped, because back then you had to wait for each individual episode to drop over a course of weeks. I thought to myself, man, this is the greatest game I've ever played. And the more time that's gone on, and they played season 2, season 3, Michonne season, and then the final season, the whole series is incredible. Like, I would say get the definitive edition, because this is going to have all 4 seasons, Michonne season, and even 400 Days, which is kind of like an addendum to season 1. And it's kind of a bridging the gap between season 1 and season 2. And this game, man, especially season 1, with Clementine and Lee, and that whole relationship between father and surrogate daughter. Before I was even a dad, it moved me very deeply. And then, of course, I met my wife, and she had a daughter. And so my oldest is my stepdaughter, but like, she was, young. She was a little younger than what Clem is at the beginning of this game, and had curly, big hair, and in a lot of ways just reminded me of Clementine. And seeing that relationship in the game between Lee and Clem, and seeing a lot of how I would go to the ends of the earth for my kid, like, I just really resonate with that. And this game has held more value as a result over time. So if you are ready for, in my opinion, one of the greatest gaming experiences from an emotional standpoint, maybe not from a gameplay standpoint, but emotionally, this one is up there. Get the tissues ready, get the definitive edition. It's always on sale too, and it's on everything for sure. So, I mean, it's on Switch, it's on PlayStation, it's on Xbox, it's on Steam. Get it, you will not regret it. So at number 6, when I was making this list, I was trying to stick with one game per series, or one entry per series, which is how I kind of cheated with Little Nightmares. I'm going to have to make an exception for an additional game from one series, which might kind of give away a game coming up later. But this game was so formative for me in my childhood, and really created, like, beyond, the NES days and the SNES days with my dad and friends when I was super, super little. When the N64 came out and me and my brother played it together, a lot of my formative, like, I am a gamer memories and development really came out of this game. And I have fond memories of like playing this game with my brother and troubleshooting problem areas of this game, which you'll probably know as soon as I show it to you. But I had to include this game, even though it's an additional game from a certain series, and that's Ocarina of Time. Now, this might seem low because it's at number 6, but I'm just telling you, like, these other games, to me, just mean more, or I resonate with them more. I found more enjoyment out of them. Not to say that I didn't find enjoyment in this. Shoot, guys, I have this. I have a Japanese cart of this game. I have this game on 3DS. Like, I love this game. This game, to me, without this game, there is no part-time gamer dad. There is no love of video games that carries on throughout my entire life. Like, I've got a Zelda calendar right there. Every year I have a Zelda calendar. I have all these Zelda amiibos and figures and Game & Watch and posters and commemorative pieces, and like, without this game, that doesn't happen. I don't think I have to say why this game is on my top 10 games of all time list. I think everybody gets it. It's on a lot of people's, but I feel like I do need to explain why it's a little lower for me, and that's just because these other games just mean a little bit more to me. But this game holds so much value in terms of who I am as a gamer, and without this game, like I said, I don't know if I'm here right now making this video. So thank you for this game, Nintendo. This game really means a lot to me. So at number 5 is a game from a series, a very big series that I didn't really get into until about 3 years ago. I sat down over the course of like 5 or 6 months in 2021, and I started from the very beginning, and I played through every single game in this series. And this game was early on in the series, and I really fell in love with it, and there's a remake of it, and I find the remake to be the best version of any game in the entire series. There was a game from this series on my most overrated games list, which if you haven't seen that, you can go watch it. But that is Resident Evil 2 Remake. And this game, man, it's just so good. Like I said, I love horror games, and there is something about Resident Evil games, especially on earlier on in the series, where it wasn't so action focused, that really created a sense of dread of going into a room. Like, I don't want to go down that hallway, not just because I'm scared, but because I don't want to end up using resources, because I'm waiting for that big bad boss fight that I know is coming at some point. And then, of course, Mr. X kind of, following you around the police station for an extended period of time. You're trying to escape him while you're also trying to complete different missions and get to different checkpoints and just complete some tasks. Like, it was anxiety at an all-time high playing this game, but I loved it. And of course, Leon and Claire have their own stories in this, and so you get a unique experience when you play each of their campaigns, and it's just a really well-constructed game. I don't think it's perfect. I think any Resident Evil game is going to have some issues. Any video game is going to have some issues. But out of all the Resident Evil games, this to me is the one that is the most well-constructed, the best put together. It is such a feat of game making, especially from a horror aspect, and in a subgenre that is so overly saturated, like zombies. But obviously Resident Evil kind of helps start that subgenre, and the remake, I really think, elevates it to a whole new level. So Resident Evil 2 Remake has my vote at number 5 on my list. At number 4, I mean, you could put both of the games that I'm about to mention into this one spot. I'm going to stick with just the first one, and I'll tell you why here in a second. But it's God of War. This is a steelbook case of the first game from 2018. So not really the first game, but kind of like the soft relaunch of God of War. And the reason I have this one and not Ragnarok, and Ragnarok's a 10 out of 10, like, don't get me wrong. Now we're in 10 out of 10 territory. Like, there's no questions here. But this was such a revelation coming out of, like, God of War 2, God of War 3, Chains of Olympus, Ascension, Ghosts of Sparta, where the formula had been kind of run down. the gameplay was very much like hack and slash, but like, I don't know, the combos all felt the same. It was all set with the Greek backdrop, and so it kind of got burnt out on it over time. And the shift to Norse mythology with God of War 2018, but more importantly, the relationship between Kratos and his son. You get to see Kratos be a dad and see him who he was slightly as like a husband, how that really affected him and kind of harkened back to who he was before he was the God of War. But you got to see it more like in his actual interactions with his wife, in these like flashbacks and kind of like in his memory and just moments where he thought he would see her. And so you're seeing interactions and with Atreus, and it's like, it's such a moving experience from start to finish. Even when it gets tense, even when it gets a little difficult, this game moves you to a degree that I think it is the definitive like Sony game, if there wasn't one other game I'm about to mention, because it encompasses everything that we love about storytelling, which Sony does so well. And I really feel like even if Ragnarok had never come out, this game would still be a 10 out of 10. I think Ragnarok actually enhances this game even more. And Ragnarok as its own thing is also a 10 out of 10. But for me, this one is just a little bit higher because it was such a pivot from what we'd seen in the past. And now, like I said, being a dad of a kid, like that was incredible. Having played that and already having been a dad, but like now I have a son. And so this game and Ragnarok holds so much more weight for me. And my son's only like 15 months old, but like just watching him grow up and knowing that, some of those conversations that Kratos and Atreus have and kind of their dynamic, that could be me and my son one day. And just seeing the love a father has for his son really got to me, especially playing Ragnarok as I held my son who was like a month old. Okay, so God of War 2018. If you, for some reason, I've lived under a rock and haven't even played this yet, please go play it. You will not regret it. It's a 10 out of 10, no question. So at number 3, this is the other Sony game I was talking about. I think it's no surprise. So on the most overrated games list, I had told you guys what some of my favorite games were, and I challenged you to challenge me on them, and a few of you did on this particular one. Again, there's 2 games in this series. I think they're both 10 out of 10, which a lot of people disagree with me on number 2, but I really love them. And I think they're great games all the way around. But this one, I've played it 3 separate times, of the original version, the remaster, and the remake. And so it's Last of Us Part 1. Again, kind of going back to the dad-daughter dynamic, this game, to me, is so well written. I think of all the games, it might be the best narrative overarching. And I think that in terms of character development and the way it's just written from a narrative standpoint, it is probably the best game of all of them. It's not my favorite, but it's so incredibly, it's a masterpiece. And the gameplay is very intuitive, but it's easy to pick up, but it's a little difficult to master, especially when you're rationing your resources and going against hordes of clickers and zombies and also fighting against people, right? So this game, to me, I really can't, I don't think a review does it justice. And obviously the show came out, and the show was amazing too. If for some reason, I know I keep saying this, but like for this one especially, it's been out for over a decade now. If you have not played Last of Us, pick up your PS3 or pick up your PS4 or pick up your PS5, grab a copy of this, especially if you have a PS3 or PS4. It's dirt cheap nowadays. At most it's $20. Play this game. This is the experience, the definitive gaming experience for me on a PlayStation. And I think 2 holds up to that statement as much as 1, but 1 to me is just the better game overall, and for me, just a more cohesive narrative. So definitely check this game out if you ever see it. If you ever see it and you have never played it, but for me, it's number 3 on my list. Okay, number 2. For a long time, this game was my favorite game of all time. And like I talked about Ocarina of Time earlier, this game for me was probably the revitalization of my love of gaming, like in my early 20s. And it's something that, for me, I wrapped up a lot of who I was as a gamer in the identity of this kind of game. But I really didn't find a love of this kind of game in other games like Dragon Age or anything else like that was RPG driven. It's just never been me. But this game at that time, this series at that time, was exactly what I needed. And this game in particular, this is like the special edition, collector's edition. This is Mass Effect 2. This game, from a choices matter standpoint, is the most definitive game of all time in that genre. I think Mass Effect 1 is an incredible feat and really laid the foundation of what Mass Effect 2 became. I think Mass Effect 1 had a couple of issues, right? Like some of the combat elements weren't as polished. The story was incredible. But then the fact that like decisions you had made in the first game carried over into this game, and everything you did throughout the game and building relationships with characters and how that influenced the final section of the game in the final mission. It was unlike anything that I feel like we've ever seen as gamers and probably have seen since. In this game, like, I cannot tell you how many hours I poured into it. I've never been a big DLC guy. I've just never been a guy who likes to buy a bunch of DLC. I remember going the day DLC would drop for this game, like Shadow Broker and stuff like that, and buy it like straight from the store, go home, download it, and just run through the DLC in this game. It's, for me, it's the game that kept the love of gaming alive in me through my early 20s and until I got to number one. And once I hit my number one entry, like, it's been no looking back. So if you really want to look at this in the view of like my gaming development, it was probably like Contra when I was really, really little. Then it was Ocarina of Time when I was a little bit older. And then about 10 years, 12 years later, it was Mass Effect 2, which is ironically at number 2. And now we're going to talk about number 1, which is my favorite game of all time. So this one hurts. I love this game so much. I have so much crap from this game. And I have so much love of it that anytime I see something from it, I get it. And somewhere along the way, as I've tried to share that love of the game with other people and have loaned it out, I somehow lost the box to this game. And if somebody who I've loaned this game out to is watching this, it wasn't you, it was me. This game has been out for 7 years and we've moved several times in that time, and I've just lost the case. So maybe I'll find it before we move again, hopefully this year, fingers crossed. But I do have the collector's edition guide because, like I said, I own what feels like everything from this game. And it should be no surprise at this point. I think I've talked about it before. It's Breath of the Wild. I know. Breath of the Wild ends up in a lot of people's top list, and I know the complaints about it. It feels empty. It feels repetitive. It feels really like, wash, rinse, repeat. For me, this game came along at the right time. I got the Switch on release. I got it with Breath of the Wild. It took me a couple years to play it because I was playing with my daughter, my oldest child, and she really took a keen interest in this. And I think for me, that's a big part of the reason I love this game so much, because I look back at my now 14-year-old, and back then she was 7, 8, 9 years old, and we're playing this game together, and I'm showing her my love of video games, and I was introducing her to other games I loved, like Kingdom Hearts and Mario, but this is the one that always, and Little Nightmares, but this is always kind of the one that stuck around in my mind. And of course I've gone back and played it a couple times, and Tears of the Kingdom came out, and I've been trying to give that a shot, but it just doesn't feel the same as this game. This game was such a revelation when it came out. It was such a different approach to Zelda than we had ever seen, and it created such an influence and inspiration that all these other games that started coming out in the past 7 years look exactly like this game and play exactly like this game. And this game became the template for a lot of other video games, especially indie developers, to base their games off of, and even some like more AAA budgeted games. So this game for me, from start to finish, is my favorite game of all time. I don't think it'll ever be topped. And also just the experience with the Switch and getting to play this game just in the world, and you go to the park and you're outside and just getting fresh air, go on a walk to the park, you sit down by the pond by our house, open this up on the Switch, start playing a game where you're outside in nature, and just exploring. You're on an adventure. You're an adventurer. You're a hero. And what's there not to love about that? And the characters and the score and the ambiance and the ambient sounds and art style, like every bit thing about this game, to me, it's an 11 out of 10. It is my favorite game of all time, and that will never change. Even with the things that people don't like about this game, I hear you. I totally understand. This game will always stand the test of time for me. So that's my favorite game of all time. Guys, thank you so much if you made it to the end of the video. Like I said earlier, please like and subscribe to the channel. And let me know down below your favorite games of all time. Also, let me know where you might disagree with me on some of these and where you would have put some of these games in your top list, or where you would have replaced those games with. Also, let me know down below in the comments what kind of lists you'd like to see in the future. I think the lists are kind of where we're going over time. And I'd love to tell you just kind of like my favorites or least favorites, or games I find the most interesting, or things I find the most interesting about games. If you haven't seen the most overrated games video, please, like, I've created a lot of discourse, but civil discourse. So go watch that. Let me know if you agree or disagree. And one more time, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I will see you very soon.